I think your points shouldn't be discarded because I think they are very, very valid if you look at them critically. Talking about incident forms, even though we're speculating here, we're also looking at possibilities of having some of these forms even without filling them, because even when you do fill them, you may not be there when they try to do the authentication. But the problem now is that now that we're here and these arguments, I'm quite sure INEC is following all of the arguments for and against, looking to see that they do a better job on that day. What would you want to see them do in the light of some of these, well, hitches that has been raised?
One, I would want INEC to be more open and honest and confirm its challenges in good time so that it doesn't set itself up to be messed up. Jega has been too part of the positive part of our national history. To allow his, to my mind, he's been and remains the best ASU president. It was under his tenure that ASU was really playing its role, where you had an organization that realized it was made up of academics, scholars, academicians, and who could take policy decisions, who saw interest in national policy, not just trade union issues. So let him not deceive himself. Evidence-based communication. I'll just take a tangential observation. You know, in the course of the campaign, one of the issues that's often been raised is corruption. Oh, this government has been the most corrupt government we've had. Evidence-based communication. President Obasanjo, you know, was a founding member of Transparency International. Now, that's the organization that measures nations on their performance in terms of corruption. It's the TI rating that you use to determine which country is most corrupt. That Transparency International in Obasanjo's first tenure scored him 13%, scored Nigeria 13% in the fight against corruption. Second term scored Nigeria 18%. Under Yar'Adua, Nigeria scored 24 point something. Under Jonathan, Nigeria scored 27 point something. Evidence-based discussion, communication, and national dialogue. And it is not for want of noise. You fight corruption by actually making it unattractive. Put obstacles so that those who, even as far as they try, eventually you get hold of them. Electoral processes, you can say between 99 and today, what is it looking like? Fewer people are able to step forward with forged papers for the obvious reason that the judgment of the courts have been taken most. Now, the point I'm making here is that if you actually don't pay attention to the facts and the evidence, you will run on public opinion. Oh, a lot of things are happening. Don't you measure things and know how to draw conclusions about them? So coming round to the matter of the INEC, the issue on the table at the moment, the real concern is not about INEC. It's not about the parties. And if you look at the position of the parties, again, it gives you some concern. Because at the time they wanted to postpone the elections, one party said, no, INEC is not ready. Another said the INEC is ready and gave briefings. If a party is planning to take over and is talking about change, and has no capacity for assessing the institutions of state with which it will manage Nigeria, that should give you a lot of worry. On all fronts.
How do we come to that conclusion that they have no capacity? Because they what? They want the card readers to be used and PVCs?
At the time, one party was saying INEC isn't ready. Another was saying INEC is ready and would work. And very angry about it. And it turned out that that party didn't have any information at all about INEC's preparedness.
Well, they did not just say INEC was ready. I mean, INEC itself
announced that it was ready.
Just a moment. And they also believed that if INEC is truly independent, if it is an independent institution and we say it is such, then perhaps we should leave it that way. But eventually, what played out was that based on what they claimed were security reports, or what they said were security reports, the elections were shifted for, the 6 weeks had been touted for a long time.
Yes.
And for that 6-week period, perhaps it was shifted for. If INEC were to shift it on its own ground of being ready or not being ready, people say, maybe it will not be for that long.
But you see, there's a congruence of facts. Number one, there was a security report. Number two, the processes and materials for the elections were actually not yet ready with INEC. So those things are on the table. And then it says something. If between the two of us, we say, look, we want to sit down on this table, and you say, look, I can't see this is supposed to be 4-footed, there's only 3 legs. And I'm screaming, no. They say we should sit down by 8, so let us sit. And you're saying, pay attention to the leg. And it turns out the carpenter comes around and said, well, we just had some, this. You see, if it turns out that both of us, you took greater, what do you call it? You pay greater attention to the facts on the ground, you will have more credibility than myself. Now, that's what I'm saying in respect of the postponement. Namely, the two biggest parties, PDP and APC, were on it. It became an issue. Oh, PDP wants to rig the elections, he wants to move it back to do all sorts of things, and therefore it shouldn't move. PDP said its own. How did it play out?
You know, I go back to the election proper now because it's almost 2 weeks from now, and the thing is, and try to look at the accreditation process, which we just try to highlight. If we're saying that we may run into some of these problems on that day, now is a better time for us to start looking at how,
solutions.
Yes, some of these solutions. So in having been accredited for this particular process, accreditation is simply for the card reader. You know, the actual voting has nothing to do with the card reader. You come, you thumbprint, your biometrics pops up, and you know whether you're really ready to vote. If we are to do away with that for those whose biometrics can't come up, and you say the incident forms could also be a problem, what would be your suggestion so that that person doesn't get
disenfranchised?
Yes.
The first thing is that the political parties themselves must rise up to the responsibility for political education. There's a mistaken assumption that it's just INEC that should educate Nigerians. So let you know, if you and I are contesting elections, part of our responsibility as candidates would be to go to our catchment areas and tell them what to do to make sure they vote for us. The parties need to do that. This one of saying they don't know how to read candidates, it is because the parties are not doing the much they need to do, even in their own interest. INEC cannot do. What's the human capital capacity of INEC? You know, you will have hundreds of thousands of people working on 28th of this month in the elections. Less than 10% of that number are staff of INEC. So let's not push the point too much. INEC needs to be first. So on the matter of what to do, it is now for INEC, I think, if I'm in INEC's position, to have a meeting with the parties and acknowledge these challenges. Look, the matter of incident form allows for fraudulent exercise of discretion.
Even though it is INEC's either ad hoc staff or members of staff that will fill them, not the voter.
No. So just admit that this can happen. And please, gentlemen politicians and ladies, it's in your interest to be interested in this. Instruct your representatives to, do you get it? By that time, you've created the correct stakeholder platform for extra vigilance. Namely, there are 50 incident forms here. Okay, so we see them. The reps must see and agree. And there has to be some official communication on transmission time. Because having agreed and signed, if he's not part of the collation, if he doesn't go to the central collation point, there's nothing transmitted.
Yeah,
it will only be what you have in the machine.